Today's demo in Blender will be modeling and animating an object and then animating the camera. So the first thing we want to do is we want to click on the cube and right click, delete. Because we want to take an object and we're going to find the closest object to what we want, and then we will transform that to some degree. So you go to add, mesh, and what we're going to do is get a torus, because it does look a little bit like a donut, and I actually want to make some sort of wheel. Now as soon as you click it, you're going to get this little tab here that opens up. And before you do anything, click this open, because what we want to do is we want to change a little bit the size of that torus, that kind of donut. And so you can go the outside radius and the inside radius. Now, if you want to make a donut or a wheel, doesn't really matter. And you see this is kind of squared off, but we don't really want to change the roughness of this just yet, because it works when we kind of work with editing. Okay, and you can make more or less segments with it. It doesn't really matter, but somewhere around there is pretty good. And again, you want them to be fairly square in shape, because when you put the subsurface in, that's what happens. Okay, good. Now you go to this object mode here, and you want to go into edit mode. As soon as you go into edit mode, what happens is it highlights all of these points, and these points are kind of movable. So what we want to do is we want to just transform this a little bit so it's not so perfect. You want it kind of lumpy, and imagine that you're making a little bit of a donut. Okay, but I want to move it a little bit higher first, so I'm going to go back into object mode, and I just want to raise this up a little bit away from the grid. Okay, and then we go back into the edit mode. And again, you can zoom in or you can spin around it, but you can't activate anything outside of this torus when you're activated in edit mode. So once this is activated, you can highlight just a single point, and you can move that point in and out. Or you can highlight more than one point, and you can move those in and out using the X, Y, and Z axis. Or you can also just press G. You get the grab tool. You don't even have to click. It'll just move in and out. So you want to spend a little bit of time mutating this to some degree. G. Okay, that's good enough. That's just to show you how you can do it. So that's a little bit of simple modeling. Okay, now you want to smoothen this whole thing out. So what you do is you go into this toolbox, right there, nice little toolbox, and you add a modifier. And you go down to something called the subdivision surface. And when you click on that, you can see it adds a number of subdivisions. So what you can do is you can start adding more and more subdivisions in there to kind of smooth it out. There you go. And so that's rounded it off quite a lot. And you could go into the advanced and kind of work on the quality of it. But that's enough right now. Okay, now we're going to go back into the object mode, and we can start to edit this. So you can see in your levels here, if you leave the level at 1, it'll still look a little bit squared off. And when it's a little bit lower, it allows you for the program itself to move a little bit smoother. But really it's the render view which matters. If you want to see what it looks like in a render, you click render and then render image, and it will show you what it actually looks like. And if you move up the levels viewpoint, it'll round it off as you like. But actually that takes up more generating power. Okay, so I'll just leave it at 2. So now what we want to do is actually animate this and get it to move. And to animate it, you want to actually start with keyframes. So you got to click this, and then as soon as you move this to some degree, you're going to get a keyframe. So you see it adds a keyframe there. So now we could move it ahead like 30 frames. And maybe move it to here, and then another few frames, and then you can move it up, and then a few more frames, and you can move it this way. Okay, and then when you go back to the beginning, you'll watch it, it'll move along that pathway. So far we've got 250 frames here, and that's all we're going to use. Now what I'm going to do is actually, now I want to turn this sideways and make a wheel and then have it spin and then multiply it. So you want to click this, and what you want to do is just turn this 90 degrees. So we'll just type in there 90 degrees. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to make 4 wheels. So what I can do is just click on this, right click, and duplicate objects. And then immediately click so that it doesn't move, because I want to put a keyframe in there, and just move it ahead just slightly, and then drag this along. And then you can click on this rotate. Maybe I'll move it a little bit closer in. And then highlight both of these. Move this along just slightly. And then you go duplicate objects, and then click again so that it doesn't move. And then just move this ahead very slightly here and drag these across like that. Now you should have 4 wheels. That when you bring it back to the beginning, it's just going to be one donut. Now you could actually slow this way down. You could drag apart all of these keyframes or do it a lot slower, but I wanted to go fairly quick. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I want another object here. Add mesh, be cylinder. That's bigger than we want, and we're going to just move it out of the way. Put it here, and then you can change the scale in the attributes toolbox and make it a great deal smaller and a little bit shorter. 200, 200. Good. And we want to animate this. So we have one keyframe there, and then we move the animation along just until the 2 wheels separate there, and then move back a little bit. So you'll have to move this around a little bit so you can get it centered. That's pretty well centered. And then what I want you to do is turn that 90 degrees. Not that one. Okay, and then just move the cursor ahead slightly. And then move this to the center and then make it a lot longer. And make sure it's pretty well centered there. So there you go. There you have one axle. And you can make the axles more complex as you if you like. Zoom out a little bit. Spin this around. And then what I want you to do is click on here and then duplicate object. And then just click so it doesn't move. Move this ahead very slightly. And then drag this to the center. That's pretty good. And then move the cursor ahead just a tiny bit. And you're going to take this, duplicate it, and then just click so it doesn't move. Move ahead again a little bit more. And then I want you to rotate this 90 degrees. And then move it backwards. There, and then all of those are animated, so we'll move this back, and you're going to see it goes quite quickly. There you go. There you've animated everything into place. Now we're going to rotate all the wheels, and you could rotate them going one way or the other. It doesn't really matter. You want these wheels to rotate a little bit. So you highlight one of the wheels, and you put it into the rotation mode, and then you get this little red rotational thing, and you just move it slightly forward. By rotating it slightly, you set a keyframe, and then it changes all of the values in the attributes panel. Now you can move this all the way to the end, and then drag this number along so that it keeps spinning, however much you want it to spin. There you go. Now you can see it spin. Now you bring it back to here, and you grab the next one, and then you just rotate it very slightly, drag it to the end, And this one goes the opposite direction. It doesn't really matter which way you spin it. Then bring it back to here again. Click on the next one, just spin it very slightly. Drag the cursor to the end. Now you could put exact numbers in here, but it doesn't really matter. We'll have them all spin at different speeds. And I don't know why it does that, but when you first activate it with the rotational wheel, it changes all of these values in here. Then again, drag that to the end and raise that up to about 1,000. Now, you drag this back and you play the whole animation. You can get those wheels spinning. Now we can drag the entire animation back to here. We're going to back up a little bit and highlight the entire thing. And then you go into the move mode and you could drag it to here. And then you could drag it to there. Maybe make it go up. Well, it kind of jumped ahead a little bit. And I know why that is, because I didn't actually put a keyframe for all of them. But that's kind of an interesting animation. Okay, so one mistake in there. So what I could do is just undo a bunch of things. Pressing Command Z to undo multiple times. And just put a slight movement there. So that makes a keyframe that would lock everything into place. Then when I move this ahead, it should all move together, right? So you can do a much more complex animation than this. I'm just showing you technically how to do it, but I would expect you to plan out your movements and you can make some very elaborate animations. Now, before animating the camera, I think that I'm going to add some textures to these just so you can see it better when it spins around. So we have to highlight each one and press the little world thing there, and then start. You can either just add colors if you like. You could make one blue. And here, if we put it into render mode, you could see. Or you could start adding images to it. So again, you hit base color, image texture, open, textures. You might want real wood on that one. Maybe we can make a couple of the tires real wood. So you can click on that one, then just click onto material. Maybe this one will make brick. Again, base color, image texture. And we could just kind of put some random images in those. Maybe even a beach scene on there. Maybe make that one also wood or brick. And make that one wooden. So now when you actually animate this, you can see the thing spinning around. And then after that, we're going to animate the camera and follow it around with the camera. What we'll also do is add a nice kind of grassy bottom to this. So we're just going to add a mesh and a plane and drop that plane down a bit and make it very, very large. And then I think it might be nice to add a nice grassy texture. So when we follow it around with the camera, it'll kind of be going over that nice surface. But here you can actually watch it go. So chances are you're going to want that grass to be a lot bigger. Okay then, now let's animate the camera. And you'll see on your screen the camera is right here. And if you click the camera, you can look at it from the camera point of view. But what you want to do is you want to split the screen into two so that you can have the overall view and the camera view. So what you need to do is hover your mouse just over a corner and you'll get a little cross icon. You can actually pull this along and then you get two views. And one of them will just keep in the flat view without the actual rendered view. And in this one, you actually want to, or you watch this go, you can watch it on the camera. And if you want, you can switch the two around to get the view. And now we're going to animate the camera. So what you need to do is you need to click on the camera, and then you actually want to start putting keyframes in there. That's your keyframe activator. So just to get one keyframe in, just move the camera slightly. See, and it puts in a keyframe. And then you can start doing the same thing, moving the camera around to follow this. So you probably want to zoom into this here, move the camera head slightly until things start to move out of view. And then you can start moving the camera. You can either just move it backwards, and you can start working on the angles here. So you can already see that the camera's starting to track. And of course you can zoom in and out of this, and you can zoom in and out of this. But here you want to keep your camera in view. So we won't move any of the other objects, we're just going to move the camera. So at some point you may want to look at this entire thing from above. So you could move the camera upwards and then angle it down and even a little bit further away, and then you can change your angle there. So you can watch the construction of that from above. And now you might want to swing this around to some degree. There you can see your camera there. So you can just manipulate location and rotation. And then you could zoom in a little bit. So now we can see how the camera will follow along, and then you can fine-tune it. So wherever it moves out, you can actually change that angle slightly. And if you want to delete one of the frames and then reposition it, you can just hit delete frames. And if you want the camera to go in and out of view at times, that's quite all right. And now if you'd like, you could actually render the animation. It needs some fine tuning, but there's your render. And now you could actually watch the animation. So you can see it's a rather short animation, and you could do a little bit of tweaking with the movement of the camera, but that's essentially how you animate a camera in Blender.